Well. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to
the Chiss Ascendancy.
Today is episode 34, and we're talking about Sith Lords of the Old Republic.
Lovely.
And so, we've got a lot of material to cover. We're talking about two of our favorites, two underrated Sith Lords.
Or at least under-discussed.
Under-discussed, under-loved. And over here. I don't like him. His eyes are too close together. And he's a yank. So today we're talking about specifically Darth Nihilus, which is also known as something else we'll reveal later after our newsy news, and Darth Malgus.
Also known as Darth Malgus.
Yeah.
No nickname for that guy.
Lord of the Lords. Yeah, so Darth Malgus and Darth Nihilus, two of my favorite Sith of all time, and I know they're part of Samuel's favorites. So I'm more of a Nihilus fan than Samuel, but we both really like Malgus.
Yeah.
And so
I've always been a fan of Nihilus just since I saw the old cover on KOTOR. I was like, what is this about?
Who's this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very cool. So we are going to cover that, and first we're just going to jump into a little news. To catch you up. And so nothing super crazy, but there was some very cool stills that had come out from The Mandalorian that we wanted to kind of break down and discuss. There wasn't, I guess we could have forced ourselves to do a whole episode about it. But this first picture, the first ones we're going to go through are the covers, alternate covers for Entertainment Weekly. You can always count on them to come in the clutch with new photos. And so this first one, we've got the Mandalorian in his Beskar armor, and he's got I guess that's a new satchel, and it's a little carrier for Baby Yoda, the child. And so he's looking nice. I'm trying to see. I think does his glove guards just stay regular metal? He doesn't put them with some Beskar, I guess. And then the second one is the child peeking out from behind the Mandalorian's boot. The child.
Cute as ever.
Cute as ever.
Cute as a button.
Thirdly, one of my personal favorites. It's not even has anything to do with anyone on the crew, but we get a dadgum Tusken Raider
on a bantha.
Riding on a bantha, and so one has to assume that is a Tusken on a bantha on Tatooine.
Yeah, you don't see them anywhere.
So unless there's off-world Tuskens now, like there are off-world Jawas, my assumption is we're back on Tatooine, which kind of cements theories that we've heard and discussed about Cobb Vanth, the lawman of the West, Tatooine's self-appointed sheriff, and which kind of opens up the door for Timothy Oliphant's character, and which opens the door a little bit, perhaps, for Boba Fett.
Yeah. I'd love to see how that all unfolds. I was upset that we never got a really good resolution on episode 5 of season 1.
Yeah, I think that they knew how well it would be received. Mm-hmm. And of course Filoni was involved. He directed that episode. And so when Filoni's involved, it's going to be good. And I think that he has a confidence to know we're going to be back next season, and we'll open things up more.
Well, there was no question about the fact that they were going to return.
Right.
And it's both good and terrible that the rest of the season introduced so many other things worth talking about. The Darksaber we got.
Yeah, I could have stayed on Tatooine.
A surviving Moff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So one wonders how much resolution we'll even get in season 2.
Well, the rumor I've heard is very little resolution in season 2, a lot of resolution in season 3 for the things that are going to start on Tatooine.
Just like calculus.
So the thing that I've heard is Boba will be back, and he'll have a little bit of screen time in season 2, but they're planning on perhaps, this is just speculation, I don't know, I haven't talked to anyone at Disney or anything like that, but he's going to be the main antagonist for season 3. Which, here's my problem with that. You know what's going to happen. They're going to have Boba Fett die because of the Mandalorian.
Maybe he'll get a proper death, though. The way befitting a Mandalorian.
Yeah, Here's the thing. It's just
not a malfunctioning rising phoenix.
Yeah. It stinks because, the same way I feel about Luke Skywalker in the sequels, even though I love Luke and I think he did a good job, the way he was written, not Mark Hamill's job, but the writing job for Luke in episode 79 was not my favorite. And that's not because it wasn't a good job. It's because I've tasted and seen of the sweetest of loves. And so I can't be, satisfied with lesser things. So I'm rereading Legacy of the Force right now. And freaking Luke Skywalker's like, what if I pretended I died and just cut myself off from the Force so I could attack you from behind? Like, I don't know, just stuff like, he's such a master. Mm-hmm. And so, anyways, that being said, I've read the books and the magazines. With freaking Boba Fett doing crazy stuff. Yeah. And so, that just makes me, it's going to make me sad if he's like a sucky, I don't know. I'm not trying to get depressed before we even start the episode or even see The Mandalorian. I'm sure they'll give him justice because they feel
I haven't really been disappointed by The Mandalorian yet, so I'm going to hold out on hope.
Exactly. And then the next couple of things, so the reason that we're going in that order is those are the portrait, and then these are landscape. So they were divided on our Instagram page that way. You got the Mandalorian lounging around in his new Beskar with the child just chilling there on a bag of peanuts.
Nice.
So maybe they're at Five Guys. Five Guys, banthas and fries. Giancarlo Esposito, Los Pollos Hermanos, in space. What if he's just cranky because he's trying to get chicken?
He's just hangry.
He's just hangry for some Los Pollos Hermanos. But yeah, Moff Gideon looks bad to the bone there. And I think he looks like he's contemplating something. He looks like I don't think he's stressed, but I think that he's doing a little math.
You don't get to be a Moff without being a little sneaky.
Yeah. And then we have the crew, so the main three. So now that Grief Karga's kind of on the Mando side of things, and he's, Mando saved his butt a couple of times in a row.
It appears he's gotten a little stressed out between seasons 1 and 2 because his beard's gone straight gray.
So you've got Mando, Cara Dune, and Grief Karga. I like Grief's new outfit. Karis is also a little bit different, but same color scheme. Then you have a single still of Grief Karga. Getting ready to beat the crap out of Rocky. And then this is a cool one. Mandalorian on a swoop bike with Baby Yoda precariously placed in a knapsack on the very back of the speeder.
He's fine.
He's hanging on with both hands.
Yeah, he's safety.
And then finally you got a new still of Cara Dune by herself. New outfit. So very, very cool stuff. Very exciting. I'm excited for season 2, October 30th. So
coming up pretty hot.
This will be the 14th?
Today is the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th.
So the 14th, so we're a month and
a half.
Month and a half away. So man, we're almost there. We can make it, guys.
Almost made it.
How's season 2 even going to start?
We'll see.
Man. Last year flew by just because I was just waiting for that next episode. Yeah. Hopefully they feel the freedom to make the episodes like 40 minutes each. I would love that.
If they follow in our wake. Longer episodes.
Longer and longer as we go.
Besides that, we're still both reading Thrawn.
Yeah, it's the busiest time of the year for me.
I've been so very busy
with schooling starting back up with my job, so it's been a lot of work. But we're making. I listen and read, so I'm trying to get there.
I'm trying to tag team between the audio and the regular. If I have the time, I'll cut through more content in the actual print edition. If I'm driving or working on something, audio. Just haven't found those windows.
Exactly. But it's good. It's pretty good. There's something I wanted to say that I really like.
Hopefully by next week we'll have it.
Yes.
We'll have it down.
Yes. And we will discuss. But that's for another day. Today we're talking about 2 of the not only most underrated, most
under-discussed.
And under here. But 2 of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe one of them is the most powerful, but we'll get into that in a second.
I have my reservations.
It's interesting because it's how powerful is he? You know what I'm saying? Is he in control?
Right. Or is he not?
Is he being controlled by the hunger? All right, so here we are, episode 34. We're talking about rogue Sith Lords from the Old Republic.
I mean, kind of.
All right, start the whole thing over. No, but rogue Sith Lords from the Old Republic era. The beautiful thing about Star Wars is that it's not bound by our timeline here on Oath, and so both of these guys are from thousands of years. Before A New Hope.
Yeah, so...
And it's very interesting.
Let's see, Malgus is like 2-3 generations after Revan.
Uh-huh. So they're both almost 4,000 years before.
Yeah.
So I would say that...
I'm a little more foggy on the Nihilus timeline.
Nihilus was alive same time as Revan.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of... I've seen pictures of Revan and Nihilus fighting, but I don't recall them ever actually fighting. I think that it's just kind of...
Concept art.
Yeah. So we'll jump into Nihilus first.
Okay.
And of course, per usual, we'll have a picture on the screen when we start talking about him. But Nihilus is he's kind of an interesting concept because he's very, very powerful. But the power it's two parts. He's striving for more power, but there's something that's happened to him that creates the power as well. So, honestly, when you see Palpatine with the space base at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, that's for sure not even close to the most powerful use of the Force that we've seen on screen. Mm. But I think that Nihilus, things that he did were more powerful. But it's interesting to say, is it him or is it the dark side just using him? And so basically where we start with the story of Nihilus, that as much research and reading as I can do and digging up, is that he's a human being. And he
started as a human being.
Was a human being. And was just kind of, there's a vast war going on between the Jedi and the Sith. And
I mean,
You know how it goes.
It's
interesting because they talk about him being around during the Jedi Civil War.
I think they call it the Civil War in the same way that they would call the Republic War of the Clone Wars era a civil war. Mm-hmm. It was just a war within the galaxy. Right.
It's interesting also because I think that it wasn't super long before that the Sith had kind of had they had kind of a break off of I don't know how long before, but I don't think that the Sith had just been the Sith for a super, super long time when this took place. I could be wrong. But there's that civil war going on between the Jedi and the Sith and the Jedi and the Mandalorians. And it's kind of... The Mandalorians were strong enough at this point in time that they're trying to take over the galaxy. The Sith and the Jedi kind of have parts of the galaxy that are designated to themselves. Mm-hmm. And the Mandalorians are like, we'll take all three. And so it's a crazy ongoing thing. And during this time is when Nihilus is a thing. And so Nihilus is basically just an average guy. And I think that he's within the Sith Empire where he lives. It's not super clear if he's already a Force user or a strong Force user, or if he's just kind of a regular dude.
What's interesting about the Sith, especially in the Old Republic, it seems that they're incredibly powerful and at the same time completely unaware of their power until later on in their life.
Yeah.
Like we see that with Bane.
Yep.
He's just one of the...
Using it for gambling.
He was just one of the most naturally raw power, type Sith that we see, especially in that era.
Right.
But he was in his mid-20s almost early 30s before.
Yeah, Bane is crazy because you can't really tell like when you're looking at pictures, it's hard to tell when it takes place because the coal mines make him bald.
Yeah.
So he looks old from the get. But yeah, Nihilus is kind of staying in that boat. So Nihilus comes in and he's a Force user. He's kind of with the Sith, but he's not super passionate about anything. He has a family. He has wealth. He has all these things. So I think that he's under the Sith rule, but I don't necessarily think that he is, he's not having any kind of weight in the game.
It's an ironic lack of hunger for power, considering who we're talking about, that he's willing to just kind of settle at that point in his life. He's got enough to be satiated, and he doesn't want any more.
Yeah, he's doing his own thing. And then through some circumstance, the Republic / Jedi either come to his world or his world is, caught in the crossfire of the battle between the Jedi and the Sith.
Classic Utapau.
Yeah, yeah. And the guy's like...
Unless you've brought it with you.
Right, exactly. So, thousands of battle droids. Thousands of teeth. And so, we were... I was there. I'm George Patton. I believe in reincarnation. But there's a fight going on, and basically his family is killed, and whatever business or family wealth he has or whatever, it just goes to nothing. And just think about it. Like you think about, beginning of World War I, Germany has it going on. End of World War I, you have to have, I'm sure this is sarcastic, but they said it took a barrel of gold to buy a loaf of bread. That's just what the economy was like in Germany in World War I. So then you have someone like Hitler come along, and obviously hindsight's 2020. We know that he's like one of the worst people ever, but he brings economic stability, and so of course the Germans are like, hey, this guy's not half bad, and that's kind of how Nihilus sees the Sith. Is he doesn't give a crap about the Sith,
right? And he's
against the Republic,
right? It's half driven by the kind of rescue that he sees from the Sith, but it's also his hatred for the Jedi. It's a hatred for the Jedi. Enemy of my enemy.
Yeah, it's a hatred for the Jedi, and and like I said, this is why it's kind of sad to me, because he gets kind of a raw deal from the get-go, if you think about it, because his family dies, everything he owns or loves or cares about is taken from him, and in a fit of, whether you want to call it rage or depression or whatever, he joins the Sith, and his desire is to die in battle.
Yeah, it's like he wants to die, he just doesn't want to do it himself.
Right. And so he wants to go out like a man. So he's like, I'll die in battle, I have no problem. I don't want to be here. And so he's on the planet of Malachor 4, I want to say, and there is a weapon that is called the Mass Shadow Generator. And how the Mass Shadow Generator works is it basically affects a planet by, when you watch The Force Awakens and Starkiller Base fires and it just destroys the planet, imagine that, but basically there's a secondary atmosphere that creates a mass shadow, as it were, and it's generated around the planet, and it basically kills all life on the planet. And it kind of leaves, let's say that you're here and you look at the Los Angeles, skyline, or you're in India or you're in China or places where there's like a lot of smog, and you can just kind of see, wow, it's dirty in there, Yeah. So imagine that, but a whole planet is just, it doesn't really specify what the shadow is made of, but it's basically, chemicals, and it's warfare.
Yeah.
And so, the Mandalorians and the Sith and the Jedi are all fighting, and some Jedi is like, we're going to lose, so I'm going to hit this red button and activate the Mass Shadow Generator, which destroys the world, basically.
Surprisingly vindictive for a Jedi.
Well, it's also interesting because you have Malachor is the planet that Kanan and Ahsoka and them find Maul on in Rebels. And it talks about there being a super weapon that is activated, and that's what all those, what's that place in Rome where there's the ash and it's like, is it Pompeii? Where it's just people are just like frozen in time.
Yeah.
That's what Malachor is in Rebels, where they don't call it a mass shadow generator, but they say that there's a super weapon that was used, and that's, Yoda's telling Ezra, nobody really won. Words don't make you great, basically. And he's talking, and that's what, Ezra's like, whatever it takes to defeat the Sith, and Yoda's telling him that's not the Force. That's not the light side of the Force. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting because there's that Rebels tie a little bit to this story. Mm-hmm. But Nihilus is on the planet and somehow survives this terrible destruction. I mean, imagine you're on Hiroshima or Nagasaki on 1945, and the atom bomb is dropped by the U.S. to end World War II, and you're the only person that survives, but something's wrong. And so when he finally comes to and starts making his way, around, hello, anybody, what's going on? Everyone's dead. And he feels this terrible, crippling pain, and he doesn't realize it, but the pain is a hunger pain. And basically, he is in such a bad way mentally going into this thing that the dark side of the Force has really begun to manifest in him. And the only way that he can subdue this pain is to absorb people's Force energy. And so he comes across a survivor, and they're like, hey, how are you doing? And he's like, and that hunger within him consumes their life force. It consumes, whether you want to call it their midichlorians or their Force energy or their Force aura or whatever. And it's basically their soul.
It's kind of hard to quantify that, especially now that things have changed a little bit.
Right. There's a dark side Force energy or Force talent from Legends that's called Force Drain, where basically you can suck someone's essence from inside of them.
I was thinking Dark Crystal this whole time.
Exactly. It's very much like Dark Crystal, where you drain them of what it means to be them. The dark side crystal. And so basically Nihilus this is really sad, right? So he's doing his thing, he's living his life, his family is all killed, and everything he owns is destroyed. So on a suicide attempt, he joins the Sith army and wants to fight against the Jedi, wants to die in battle. And then a freaking atom bomb is dropped on the planet. Everyone else is dead, like 3 or 4 or 5 peoples, including him. And now he has what's called a wound in the Force. Now, I know we're saying a lot of terminology here, but a wound in the Force is, remember during Order 66, when it's basically when a lot of life is taken, or if life is taken in a
or think Alderaan episode
like
4.
An inorganic way, exactly. Yeah. Like death is a part of life, and Obi-Wan and Yoda, they learn not to fear death. But when it's something that shouldn't be happening, like Order 66 is not the natural order of things. No pun intended, order. But when the Jedi are all being killed, you see Yoda drop his walking stick, and he's he clutches his chest. Something's wrong. That's a wound in the Force. So imagine that moment existing as a person, and that is what Nihilus has become. And so he, I almost said the Bible says. I don't know why. I was quoting something, so I guess I just automatically went there. But the stuff that I've read has said that he is described to the people around him as a wound in the Force. And they even say, if you did you ever play Knights of the Old Republic? When he talks, he doesn't speak a language. It's like, but when he does that, it people can die. It's just he's a black hole. Like, when you're at a party and you're having a great time and someone comes up and they're a charisma black hole or a comedy black hole. It's like that, but life. So you're having a great time. Nihilus walks up and is like, and everyone just dies because he sucks the life out of the party. And that's what it is he's a black hole in the Force, essentially. And so there's a dark side user named Darth Treya, and she basically is looking for wounds in the Force, which is pretty, gutsy. So she finds him and she says, I can train you. And so as he feeds, it's interesting because as he feeds, the mind or the soul that's still a part of his psyche wants to be free of this pain. It wants to be healed from this wound. And for, the way I've read it, it's like seconds. So it's pennies on the dollar. You suck someone's soul out and you kill them and you take in their Force essence. and for 2 seconds you feel fine, and now the hunger's back, and it's back, and it's worse than ever before. And by the time it's all said and done, the Bible, I don't know why I keep saying that. The books I've read and stuff say that he is capable of destroying worlds and absorbing their force presence. And so that's, to me, that's why I say he's the strongest force user. The problem is, it's not him, though.
Right. Well, and the other thing is that before we had Nihilus, we had Vitiate. Mm-hmm. And Vitiate's still around at the time. And he'd still already been around for 600 years.
Yeah, Vitiate's a weird character because you have Vitiate,
but he did the same thing to the nth degree already. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Vitiate is strange because he's how is he described in Revan, species wise?
I think he's a Sith.
Right?
Yeah.
So then you had the Old Republic RPG game that came out for the PC.
And he was a human.
And he's a human.
Yeah.
Which, why?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dude, we have...
I seem to remember him being
I think so too. Yeah, a pure-blooded Sith.
Yeah.
So, for those of you watching online or listening at home,
there's
the pure-blooded
Sith Order, and then there's the Sith species, for which the Sith Order is named.
Correct. And they have it's a blood red skin, and then you see where our mustaches come down jowls. Here, they have almost like
jowls, like skin flaps.
Yeah, like little, but it's different. It's kind of like I don't want to say like whiskers, but to me a jowl is like a pit bull or like a bloodhound where it's like a cape on their face. But these are like tendrils, I think is the term. They're just like little appendages. Mm-hmm. But anyways, I definitely picture. I just call him the Sith Emperor. I don't even call him Vitiate because I'm just afraid. But to me, he's just a Sith Emperor. And yeah, he's been around for forever. God knows how long. And we don't really know when he ends. Yeah. But so Nihilus, he becomes part of... it's the only time that we really see this, but he's part of a dark triumvirate. Which is Traya, who's his master. And Treya's really cool. She's this woman. She's kind of got the cape that kind of covers up her eyes, but she's got white hair. And as she's walking, she has these 3 purple lightsabers that just go around her. I don't know, it's hard to explain. I imagine if they made an action figure for her, they would need to make clear stands that hold 3 lightsabers because everywhere she goes, these lightsabers are just flying around her. Or that's part of her fighting style.
While we're talking about action figures, Josiah's just dying to mention that...
Oh, well, yeah, one of the reasons that I'm thinking about Darth Nihilus so hard is because they paid my boy some respect. And it's been rumored for a while on different websites and stuff, but they are coming out with the Darth Nihilus Black Series 6-inch figure. They made a 3.75 figure already, the scale that I prefer, and that's one of my favorite figures, is the Darth Nihilus figure. But they're making a 6-inch now, so pre-order done. Already done with it.
While we're talking about that, one of the most iconic visual pieces of Darth Nihilus is his mask.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to know what's under the mask.
There's nothing.
And the answer is that there's nothing there. So the more powerful he becomes, the more he consumes. It seems that he himself is also being consumed. Very Voldemort-esque. The more Horcruxes he makes, the more powerful he becomes. Also, the weaker he becomes.
Right. And so it's and just like a Horcrux type of thing. So there you go, Laura. You want us to do a Harry Potter thing? Here's a reference for you. Just like a Horcrux, he realizes that. Imagine here's the scale, right? And there's a scale, and in your left hand you have his humanity, and in the right side you have the wound in the Force. And so obviously when we start, he's all the way human. No wound in the Force exists. Now, it's tipped, right? And so as he decreases and the wound increases, he's losing his spirit or his own essence or whatever.
That's how scales work. The heavier end is lower.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. Well, yeah. I was thinking water weight, Anyways. So, but as the scale tips more towards, there's just a black hole wound, dark side of the Force that's just wants to consume life. And he's realizing that it's now in control. Where before, Nihilus is in control. I walk in the room. There's Samuel. He has some Force presence. I'll defeat him and consume that energy. and then I'll go about my day,
right,
and I'll go do this. And now he's just being driven by it, and so he does a ritual that stores his essence, his spirit, his whatever you want to call it, his consciousness, I guess is the right term, into the mask itself.
Right, and I think it's less that it's stored within it, like physically, but it is bound to it. It's bound to his robes, and in particular his mask.
Right. And so you have Nihilus, and you have Traya, his master, and then there's another apprentice, so kind of like brothers, I guess, with Nihilus, and that's Darth Sion. And Darth Sion looks like a dry riverbed.
He looks like a car. Usually orange.
And very low to the ground. Very popular in the early 2000s, non-existent today. No, so Darth Sion, that's funny. So they take
Wears a lot of rings.
They take their Sith names, and Darth Sion is the Lord of Pain. So very much Darth Maul style. The reason that he looks like that is because his body is completely destroyed. Mm-hmm. But his hatred and his commitment to the dark side are holding his mortal body together. And, spoiler alert, Darth Sion's end is he just decides he's sick of it and he just lets his body fall apart and he's gone. But him and Darth Nihilus take their names. So Darth Sion's the Lord of Pain. Darth Nihilus is the Lord of Hunger, which is pretty sick. And they overthrow Traya. Now, here's what's interesting, is they cut her off from the Force, but only from the dark side of the Force. So they could have killed her, and I don't know why they didn't, or maybe they thought they cut her off from the Force completely, but they only cut her off from the dark side.
Yeah, maybe they think that the only side of the Force worth cutting her off from is the dark side.
Right.
Even if she can still touch the light side, it's not a threat.
It's not worth it. Yeah. So as Sion is defeating her, Nihilus is feeding off of the part of the dark side of the Force that is being killed within her, torn from her. Mm-hmm. And basically, Nihilus then ends up going on a total rampage and is just him and Sion begin the first great Jedi purge. Mm-hmm. And they kill nearly every...
Can we talk about how the Jedi in this period of history are just like ants?
Right.
Like you throw a brick into the ant pile and immediately they just start rebuilding it.
Yep.
How many times they've just been cut down and 3 generations
Yeah, like Revan
later,
and Malak have a purge.
Yeah.
And they've got to be around nearly the same time as Sion and Nihilus. And then Nihilus and Sion have a purge.
Jedi just won't daggum quit.
They won't stop it. Maybe there needs to be some equality on your side, Jedis, huh? What if there are 2 Jedi and 2 Sith? Quit being so selfish. You're so selfish. Eventually, Nihilus, I think he either Sion dies or lets himself go, or Nihilus turns on him. But Nihilus is doing his own thing, and his apprentice Visas Mar is turned to the light side of the Force, and so his old apprentice and a handful of Jedi and Mandalore, the Preserver, all defeat Nihilus. And they basically corner him in his room on his ship as it's fighting. And he had been lured there because he heard that there was a Jedi Academy that had minimal Force users except for the headmistress, and he was going to go there and consume all their Force essence. Pretty dark. And so Anakin Skywalker, but instead of killing the children, he's eating them. So, Halloween Anakin, imagine that. The Jack Skellington of Anakin Skywalkers. And so he's defeated, and his spirit, is still in the mask, and his mask is then buried on Korriban, the Sith homeworld. And so, ultimately, he could still be brought back.
Right. Well,
so what'll happen is if someone goes and was to discover and put on that mask, the spirit of Darth Nihilus would then possess that person.
The unique thing about Nihilus in this respect is that he became a threat to the Sith Initiative because he had no loyalty to the Sith.
Yeah, he didn't give a crap about the Sith. He was pissed off at the Jedi.
Yeah, and when it came down to it, he's going to siphon off the life essence of another Sith.
Just as easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he had no qualms about dealing out death as easily to his
and
side.
I think also it makes him dangerous because he has no care for his own preservation either.
Right.
He's literally killing himself by doing what he's doing, and he's like, I'll just lock myself in this mask.
Yeah.
And that really kind of stops the bleeding in a sense because now it's bound to an object, which is kind of a Sith sorcery type of thing. And so even when he's defeated in battle, and his... I really don't understand how this works, but his physical form is defeated, but the spirit is still trapped in the mask, and the mask is buried.
Right, and they can't destroy the mask because the ritual binding his spirit to it was so powerful.
Right.
So they just have to kind of
deal with
hope
it
for the best.
I mean, yeah, you'd have to... Your best bet is, throw it in the ocean, bury it, stuff like that. So that's why it is buried.
A la The Mask.
Yeah. I'll save you, sir. So that is the story of Darth Nihilus, and we could have dragged it out and put some more stuff in there, but that's the main things. Mm-hmm. An amazing character, and now we're transitioning. Go ahead and roll the title thing again. I'm just kidding. So I'll kind of let you take the lead on this one because I definitely knew a little bit more about Nihilus.
Yeah.
But this next guy,
Malgus,
maybe my favorite Sith ever.
Wow. That's high praise. But Darth Malgus is one of the coolest in my opinion. He's got some cool things about him. One of them is just, I don't know, it's cool. I don't know why it's cool, but it's cool when people are tall. And so he's 2.2 meters. He's the tallest human Sith we know of. It's 7'3".
I mean, think about it. That might be the tallest Sith, just period. He's for sure the tallest human that we deal with.
There's like an Utapau Sith, So talk about the one from the PSP version of The Force Unleashed. He would have been mega tall.
A Pau'an isn't that much taller.
I mean, but you know what I'm saying? There are species out there. But
hey, how tall is Snoke?
I don't know.
Continue.
So that's, I don't know, that's cool. They talk about it multiple times in the Malgus book, Deceived, about his stature and how intimidating that was. And he definitely used that to his greatest advantage.
Oh, for sure.
Some other cool things about Malgus are the dark paramours he kind of has, in the sense that he definitely has Jedi rivals. One of which is Satele Shan. She's the granddaughter
of Revan and Bastila.
So
very, very powerful.
Very powerful. So when she was I think she was just a Jedi Knight at this point, but Malgus is leading an assault on Alderaan. And it's notable that it's a core world. So that's one of the harder things to assault from the perspective of the Sith Empire. Yeah. The other thing is that he's still relatively young at this point, and he's already put in charge of entire planetary assaults. Which is to speak of Malgus' raw power. He's been compared to Darth Vader.
Snoke is 7 feet, 1.827 inches.
Wow.
Malgus still has it.
Let's go.
We need a Wookiee Sith to take over.
Dang.
Now that would be raw. I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
It's hard to imagine, though, because they're so...
good-natured?
Yeah, light side.
That's how I feel about this new High Republic stuff coming out. There's that Trandoshan Jedi. And I'm like, well, I can tell you from a mile away, this guy's going to be an issue.
One of the interesting things is that I think it's on Alderaan, Malgus fights as a Brak Jedi.
What?
So he's flying over one of the destroyed cities.
Yes.
And he feels a Force presence. He's still TO'd. It's just TO because he hasn't gotten a full body shot yet. At the Jedi because he was defeated by Satele Shan. At that time, a Jedi Knight, but soon to be Jedi Grand Master. Mm-hmm. So we're not dealing with anybody petty here.
Yeah, she may have been a Jedi Master at this point, but she was definitely not the Grand Master yet, is my understanding.
Right. By the way, if you haven't read Fatal Alliances, I know Jedi
Great book,
and you get a fantastic showing from Satele Shan.
You get Satele Shan, you get Sith, you get Mandalorians, you get everybody.
It's a good book.
Dallas Driver, one of the coolest Mandalorians ever.
But anyway, so he's flying over the city. He feels a Force presence. He wants vengeance.
Yeah.
He's Darth Malgus.
The reason that's why Malgus is so cool, because he is... Okay, let's just be honest.
He's insatiable.
You've got... let's just name some of the most famous Sith Lords, okay? You've got Palpatine. You don't really get the best out of him during the movies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see him fight Yoda.
We get that cool scene from Rogue One with Vader, but
you get the cool scene from Rogue One with Vader, but
nothing
it's
compared
still,
to comics.
But
in
your
books.
mind, you're still thinking, this poor guy. He's so conflicted. Malgus is the guy who is dark side to the core.
He is.
He's got the little helmet on that has the 2 little beer holders because he's the Sith's biggest fan. That's Malgus, and so because I feel like Palpatine, the more we know about him, the more he becomes that quintessential Sith. Mm-hmm. But it's growing up, my mindset was, he's a Sith, but he's just kind of doing things for himself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And then the more you get to know, you get to see how
He is
Dark side is number one. He's got the foam finger.
Yeah. And that's Malgus.
Yeah.
And so, so continue.
Anyway, so he's flying over this. He wants vengeance. He feels a force presence. He makes the fleet turn around because he feels a single light side force presence.
Yeah.
His pilot flies back.
It's so dark side of him to be like, if I need to do something and I'm like, hey, you go ahead. I've actually got to go to the restroom.
He's not delegating. He sends himself.
He's like, well, not even just that, but he's like, if we're carpooling somewhere and I've got to get gas and I know where we're going and we're 15 minutes away,
right.
I say, hey, I'll meet you there. I got to get gas. I want to eat. Malgus is, pull into the gas station. I'm getting gas. You need gas. You can get it too. If you don't, I'm getting gas. He just turns the whole fleet around.
So they turn around, and his pilot's like, hey, don't. And he's like, I'm going. He jumps out. The whole fleet's hovering over the city. He jumps out, jumps down, and he calls out this Jedi. He's like, you can run, but you can't hide. He knows he's there.
Mm-hmm.
So this Zabrak comes out of hiding, ignites 2 lightsabers.
Very strong in the Force.
A little bit intimidating because, 1, Zabraks are just a very strong Force species anyway. 2... if you are a bigger fan of the books, you realize how unusual it is for a Jedi or Sith to use 2 lightsabers.
It means they're OP.
Because it is complicated to use 2 lightsabers. And so Malgus doesn't care.
Doesn't care because he's 7'3".
He's also he's kind of ticked. And so he doesn't even take time to gauge the power of the opponent. The opponent off-foots Malgus by pulling 2 buildings down on him.
Mm-hmm.
Like skyscrapers. Pulls him down. So 2 buildings land on top of Malgus. He uses
after he's just had a freaking mountain fall on him because the battle was the Teal Shan.
And he uses the Force to keep himself from being crushed, focuses it, blows apart the 2 buildings. Obviously, the Zabrak is now on, the boots on the other foot.
He's surprised.
He is now surprised. And needless to say, Malgus has his way with this Zabrak Jedi. But that's just a little taste of what Malgus is about.
Malgus, there's a quote that I can't remember specifically from the book. He's in the book by Paulus Kemp called Deceived, great book. If you go to YouTube,
one of the coolest things about this book.
If you go to YouTube, Deceived was kind of a...
Have you ever read a book and you're like, I wish I could see this in a movie? What happens is
so
the cinematic trailer was made,
yes,
and he wrote about it.
Yeah, so it's cool because LucasArts was getting ready to roll out the Old Republic PC game, and so Paul S. Kemp writing this book was kind of part of that idea, and so the way that they have video game trailers, well, let's include some of the stuff from the book in it. So it's very cool because some of your favorite characters, for instance, Nihilus, you get to see like cutscenes from KOTOR 2 from like 2000 and -30. So the quality there is not high tech.
Windows 95.
But the quality from this cinematic, when you're done watching this YouTube video, since you're so loyal to us, when you're done with that, type in Star Wars The Old Republic Deceived, and you can watch a whole video of him storming the Jedi Temple.
This is a little bit later in his life. He's got the respirator he's now wearing. His fight with Satil Shan, obviously messed him up a little bit. So he's got a respirator now. And he's leading the attack on Coruscant, which... if you've watched the prequels at all, that's kind of a big deal when an assault is led against Coruscant. That is the core of the core. Yeah, it's kind of like back in the day, you used to play Galactic Conquest on Star Wars Battlefront 2. This is Nightfall.
And and we'll just imagine that's the story mode. But with the Galactic Conquest, you have to take over the sectors and stuff. And so if you're playing as, let's say you're playing as the Empire, well, you have to take over Kashyyyk, which is the Republic's, strongest place. So it's harder to win there, and that's it's Olympus has fallen. It's taking over Washington D.C. It's the strongest. It's the jewel of the crown. You know what I mean?
And so Malgus being Malgus, he was chosen by the guy who was his kind of direct overseer. This is during the time of Emperor Vitiate, so. Obviously he's doing everything, but he never leaves his room, basically. So then you've got, the less higher up, but still higher up Sith.
Right.
Darth Angral was the one who chose Malgus to lead the assault. So Malgus leads the assault, is successful to a great degree. Sacks the entire Jedi Temple.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't get much greater than the.
You can't do better than beating the Jedi in the Jedi Temple. Another reference to Anakin. And one of the coolest things about the trailer is you see the troop carrier land.
Yeah.
And it breaks through all the pillars, and then it's all dark, and you just see like 800 red lightsabers ignite. Super cool. So he goes, and one of the bigger fight from the cinematic trailer is going to be his fight with Vin Zalo.
Yep.
He's basically the Mace Windu of the Jedi Order at the time.
Yeah.
And it's said that that's his most notable kill to that point. Like, that's kind of a big deal. So he expects this to translate into the destruction of Coruscant, which doesn't happen.
Well, that's what he was promised. You go in here, and if you can do your job, and because they're doing a peace treaty.
Right.
So Malgus, being the Sithiest Sith around, is
he expects that.
Hey, so while we're doing some peace talks, what if I did some really unpeaceful things?
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm gonna take over you know what? I'll do it. I'll take over the freaking Jedi Temple. You guys bomb the civilians. How about that?
Yeah.
And so he does his part.
And
defeats
he's waiting in the Jedi Temple for hours.
Think about this. So at this point, this is years later, so Satele Shan is the Grand Master at this point. So she's at the meeting, and Vin Zalo is the guy that she says, hey, I've got this really important meeting, but just in case there's any shenanigans, you watch the temple. So Malgus goes in here, eats this guy's lunch, takes over the entire Jedi Temple. They're killing Jedis left and right. And he sits in the Jedi Temple for 4 hours,
just
waiting for a bombardment that doesn't come.
And so he finds out that he was essentially a pawn even within the Sith scheme,
right.
And that the sacking of the Jedi Temple was going to be translated into a bargaining chip and not the coup de grace.
Right, and that is not to him, and maybe this is a weakness, but it's just he's not. You have the Bane line of things where it's Bane, all the way to Palpatine, where it's let's play our cards close to our chest, and when the time is right, we'll play the big hand. Malgus, I don't think, has the patience for the long game. He not only wants to win, but he wants to be the guy doing the knockout punch.
And I don't think it's necessarily that he has a lack of patience, but he sees an opportunity, and he's absolutely raging that the other Sith don't see it that way. So he goes and he...
Well, because to him...
wants to confront the Sith now.
To him, peace negotiations weren't actual peace negotiations.
Right.
They were a ploy.
Right.
So that we can do unpeaceful things, guys. Why aren't we on the same page here?
Right.
And so,
he goes to confront Darth Angral. With Darth Angral is the guy that is basically...
his rival.
Let's say if Thrawn is Malgus... then...
This is the Krennic?
This is the Krennic.
Ugh.
This is the politician who really... He's a Sith Lord. He's a Sith Master. So he's powerful in the Force, but he is a snake.
He's a snake.
He's a snake. He's not the person who's going to do the dark side things. He's looking out. He's playing the political game.
Yeah, he's the guy that... Malgus is the guy that I'm going to play the game, but I'm going to 100% put myself out there. I think Malgus, I don't think it's pride necessarily. I think he really trusts how strong he is.
Right.
And this character, I'll let you be the revealer guy, but this character is the guy who I'm going to let everybody else do my dirty work until the very last minute if I have to do something.
Yeah. And so he
has no good car ideas.
Yeah. No good car
ideas.
And so... Anyway... Malgus goes and has a meeting. Basically, Angral kind of chews him out. And
Malgus is the George S. Patton of the Sith Empire.
Being who he is, he goes to retrieve his Twi'lek friend. So you see him in the cinematic trailer. There's a Twi'lek walking next with him. She's technically his slave, but... they know each other in the biblical sense.
They have relations.
And so that's kind of his weakness throughout the story is
he has love for her.
Her name is Alina Daru. And he's going to retrieve her. He finds out that the other Sith kind of maneuvered it to where she wasn't getting taken care of the way that he felt that she should. And he kind of rages and destroys property. Also killing many of Sith soldiers, many Sith wounded, prisoners of war, stuff like that. Doesn't care. Could not care less. I remember he's, going into the hospital and he just flattens like an entire crowd, just super ticked. Which is also one of the Sithiest things, that we read about, that he just couldn't care less, about the lowers. You know what I mean?
He's an elitist.
He's an elitist for sure.
But it's a catch-22 because he's in love with his servant, who is not a human, which in the Sith Empire, there are a few species that are thought of as greater than. And obviously the pure-blood Sith are kind of on the top of that list, even though they're getting fewer and fewer. And then you have humans and Zabraks. But really, if you're a human Sith, you're the cream of the crop.
Right.
And you shouldn't, especially a species like the Twi'leks who are slaves, you shouldn't be
right. And
having relations with them.
As a kid, Malgus killed one of his dad's slaves, who was a Twi'lek, just because he could. He just wanted to see if he was strong enough to do it. He did it. So he's kind of got, this conflict within himself of,
right.
He doesn't care about them, and then yet there's this exception.
Right.
And I remember in the book, there's this scene where his name growing up was Veridon. And she calls him by his first name in front of other people.
Yeah.
And he's like, if you ever do that, I'm going to freaking kill you. I'll smurf.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he really...
He doesn't like it when she says it privately. Yeah. But she says it where somebody else can hear.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember if it's clear. Like, I don't even think necessarily anyone turned their head or anything. But it was just the fact that, I don't care if everyone knows. I don't want to feel like they know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, he's saving face. And so, Adras picks up on this.
Yes. Adras was kind of in the background when that happened, and he noticed. And so now he, being the political guy that he is, sees he has leverage on Malgus. And this kind of comes back to this, throughout the story, Malgus keeps trying to step forward, and Adras basically blackmails him with his feelings for this Twi'lek. And before I just kind of reveal the Sithiest part of him, is there anything that you can think of?
Well, I just like that he talks about, this is something he says in the book, but, the Jedi, the beginning of the Jedi mantra, I think this is like the third week in a row I've said this, but the beginning of the Jedi mantra is, there is no emotion, there is peace. And the beginning of the Sith mantra is, peace is a lie.
Yeah.
There's only passion. And Malgus takes that a step further, and he realizes that the opposite of peace is not war, it's chaos. And so, not Joker style where it's just random bullcrap, but it's, you shouldn't be seeking peace, you should be seeking dominance. So I shouldn't have these freaking peace talks. So his thought is, you got a Dras that's going to go low, and instead of Malgus taking the high ground, he's going to kick a Dras as he goes low.
Right.
And so, Malgus is absolutely starving for power, starving for war, starving for the opportunity to destroy the Jedi. And if there are Sith that don't see the purity of the dark side, then he'll just destroy them too.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him such a great Darksider.
Right.
Is because he's 100% committed to the dark side, whatever it costs.
Right. And so Malgus, because of this, is kind of like Bane before Bane.
Yeah.
He, in his time, becomes very dissatisfied with the way that the Sith are operating.
Yep.
And it really starts with this assault on Coruscant and the fact that
he feels like they've lost their way.
That he feels like they're settling. He feels like there are greater things to be striven for.
It's very much the way that Palpatine kind of maneuvers Anakin's mind towards the Jedi. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where he's like, we should be doing things differently. And
Right.
because we're not doing things differently, I'm out of here. And Malgus is the same, except for, much more pissed.
Yeah.
And he's 7'3". Have I mentioned that?
Right. And so most of the book focuses a little bit too much on the light side users. I couldn't care less.
I could give a crap.
But most of the book focuses on his inner struggle of coming to the realization, if we're settling, then what should we be working for? And within his own mind, he's kind of reorganizing the Sith Order.
Yeah, and I think he's also realizing
his weaknesses within himself as well.
I can't be ticked off and angry at everyone else for settling if I'm having weaknesses and settling within myself.
Right, and so recognizing that the biggest black chip that any of the other Sith have on him is this woman that he loves, which he admits he loves his mother-in-law.
Oh my God! He admitted.
And so he admits his love for her.
To her.
One time, and then kills her. Which when I was starting the book, and the first time I read it, pretty early on, I was like, he has to kill her. He has to. Mm-hmm. Because I've watched many a Sith come and go, and his road to power is great sacrifice. That sacrifice is the only thing meaningful to him besides his power, which is this woman.
Well, also, it's like, I know this is going to come off like really rude or whatever, but it's just nice to have a dark side character
that's so committed.
Just going to say dark side.
Yeah.
Like, would I have been sad if Kylo Ren died dark? Maybe a little, but I would have had so much respect for it.
For the commitment.
Yeah.
And so...
what if he killed Rey and the whole saga ends, dark side wins? Some people would have been upset. I would have given it 5 stars.
So after having rid himself of his weakness...
now there's nothing holding him back.
Malgus is...
the Band-Aid is off, my friends.
He's fighting bare knuckles now. He's not pulling any punches, and so he, towards the end of the story, maybe like the last thing he does.
Yep.
He goes and
it's literally. I remember I was in college still. It was the year that we had moved from to the house that we'd remodeled. That was our dorm, and so or that was our housing or whatever. And so I remember got my headphones in. I'm listening to Deceived on Audible, and it's like the last chapter, like right before the epilogue, and you just hear, who reads that book? Is it Davis or is it Mark Thompson?
It feels like a Jonathan Davis book.
Whoever it is just yells, "Address!" And I was like, oh.
So you see him basically go to the Sith homeworld. Address is on the Dark Council at this point, I believe.
Who cares? Doesn't matter.
But the point is, he has a lot of power.
Right.
And he lives on a compound that's very well protected. Mm-hmm. Malgus still doesn't care. He infiltrates the thing by himself. And has Address, he's ready to deal the death blow. Mm-hmm. And
narrated by Mark Thompson.
Good job, Mark. And so Address tries one more time.
He's got him dead to rights.
Tries to grab him by the cojones. And bring up again, this.
I know
this
about
woman.
your
Yeah. But what he doesn't know,
she's dead,
is that Malgus already killed her.
Yeah, and it's cool because you have this moment where Malgus did not want to have to kill her. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
But he knew he.
But he needed to. But in Sith fashion, he gets to take out.
Right.
That necessity on Address.
And he uses that to then give him more anger and hate and malice so that he can grow even more powerful.
Yep. And so, Malgus is adept at so many things. He's a great...
He's not particularly cunning.
Yeah, he's not...
he's not a savant of, military stratagem. He's not Bane in the scholarly vein. But
one thing is
committed.
he's committed, and he's a freaking berserker on the field.
And
he's a killer lightsaber duelist.
Yeah,
and he
obviously
he has a very very strong. Yeah, in the Sith line of things, he's considered one of the greatest Sith warriors of all time. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know how to play the political game really.
Right.
He's it's very Thrawn in a way. Mm-hmm. Great at what he does. Not great
with
at
minimalistic control over himself.
Yeah, and so we finally get to really see him unleash with some. He was really adept at Sith lightning. That was like one of his strengths, and man, he just gives this guy the beatdown of his life. Obviously ends up killing him.
Right.
But man, that moment where Adras, of course, it's cool because he's the antagonist, but he's the protagonist. Mm-hmm. You know he's a bad guy, but you're rooting for him. And
you mean Malgus?
Yeah, I'm saying when he goes to see Adras, you're rooting for Malgus. Right. So even though he's a bad guy, Malgus is the main character, and so Adras is saying, what would people think about your servant girl? And instead of that being the purple nurple that shuts him down.
Ironic that you would say purple because Alina is a rare purple-skinned Twi'lek.
Yeah, in the video she's blue.
She's supposed to be violet.
But she's supposed to be like a violet, whatever. But anyways, he's trying to give him the old flick on
the old 1-2.
The flick on the nip and being
the
like
wet willy.
Yeah, hey, I know. You know what I'm saying? He's trying to intimidate him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's demeaning to anyone.
Right.
But now that the cord's been cut, my friend.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful moment of not only can this not hurt me, mm-hmm. but I do go out of my way to hurt myself already, mm-hmm. to cut myself off emotionally from this woman, and now you're going to pay for my wrongdoing.
Right.
And he just completely destroys him. He just talks about the overwhelming force lightning and the overwhelming strength, and it's just destroys this guy.
And one of the most interesting things about this particular novel is that if you've read a lot of books that don't deal specifically with Palpatine or Vader, mm-hmm. that don't work as just like a bridge from thing to thing that you've already seen, that work as like a whole biography or mm-hmm. story of that particular Sith, almost always the book or story ends with that Sith's death. Mm-hmm. This is one of the rare exceptions in that this book ends and Malgus is still up to his own games. And
it's interesting because Malgus knows that the Sith Emperor is too strong to defeat, but he doesn't trust him and he doesn't like his plan. So story goes that he leaves and he goes into the unknown regions for a while until the Sith Emperor is dead or believed to be dead. He returns and declares himself the Emperor, disbands the Dark Council because he says it's useless. And so he's strong enough that the members of the Dark Council reach out to the members of the Jedi Council and say, both of us are screwed if we don't work together for 5 minutes and take down Malgus. And so they storm his castle, which, how dope is that? He has a castle of his own. They storm his castle, and he's overtaken, and he's basically shoved off, forced off, or jumps off of, kind of like a cliff. And that's the last we hear of him. But then there's another story. I can't remember what this is from. But it's believed that he was then, either his body was captured or he was still alive and placed in carbonite or something. And so for a while, before The Force Awakens came out, it was, not just fan theories, but like rumors. And Disney is known, and J.J. Abrams especially is known to put false information out along with real information so you don't know what the story is. And so one of the rumors that was floating around, and I guess this is kind of how we'll wind down the episode, but one of the cool things that was a concept was, hey, people who have seen trailers or people who have seen pictures or people who have seen, content from The Force Awakens, there's this ancient Sith Lord or dark side user that's supposed to have been around since before anything we've seen on screen before. Yeah. And has survived some crazy stuff. And a lot of people were thinking this was Malgus who had been awakened by Kylo Ren and brought to power. And so Snoke, a lot of people thought was going to be Malgus, which is a really cool concept. But man, I would love to see Malgus on the big screen. Right. And I think that because of the technology that they've used, man, if they wanted to do a whole thing in that art style like they had for the cinematic trailer for the Old Republic RPG, I would happily give you my $7 to $10 and see it in theaters. But man, what a crazy character. Mm-hmm. And maybe the most just purely devoted to the dark side that we see.
Absolutely.
If the Jedi are peace, I'm whatever the opposite of that is. And that's why the dark side is perfect, because it is war incarnate.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just wanting to make a joke and I'm having a bad time. I say, I'm just having, what's the opposite of fun?
Yeah.
You know, and that was, he was like, what's the opposite of a Jedi? And that's what he was. Yeah. You know, he was committed, full send, you know, to the dominance of the dark side.
Yeah. Such a very cool character. He is in the smaller scale. Man, if they ever brought Malgus to the 6-inch Black Series scale. One of my complaints, Hasbro never reached out to me, whatever. But I posted about it was, if you have a General Grievous toy, it's going to be, you know, marginally bigger than, you know, say a Clone Trooper, Chewbacca, same thing. And then Malgus is like average size. And I was like, guys, he should be this big. And I made a whole post about it and stuff. Nobody responded, whatever. But yeah, if they did a Black Series figure of him, because technically he could be a gaming great because he was that huge. He was on a freaking video book, audio book, all this stuff for the Old Republic game. And he's, and they used Lightside Revan from that same RPG later series. So the door is open. Come on, let's do this thing. We need Malgus and Jar Jar in the Black Series. What are we doing? Come on.
You know that painting?
Yeah. So, but those are two of the most underrated, underdiscussed, also most powerful Sith Lords of all time. Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger, and Darth Malgus.
The Darth
Malgus. I don't think he has a Sith title. But yeah, so those are two of our favorite Sith of all time. If you have a request, please comment on this video on YouTube, or you know, if you know us, text us, whatever. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this video, and I keep saying this, but we would love to read a review from the Apple Podcast app. And so go onto your Apple Podcast if you have an iPhone or a iPad or whatever. But I would love to read your review. So go on to your Apple Podcast app and follow the Chiss Ascendancy podcast if you're already not following us. And then if you would leave us a review, that would be awesome. And so I'm trying to find, if you go to our page, I'll scroll all the way down. We do have 7 5-star reviews or ratings, but we only have one written review.
Don't worry, I'm not from. What's our brother?
We have one written review from back in February, so we're hurting for him a little bit. So get out there and support. But February 7th, JRock210 says, "Great show, great people." The title of the review is "Star Wars fans will love this show." We agree. So spread the love so we can help Star Wars fans get their fill.
Yeah.
You guys need to be the Lords of Hunger for this podcast and help us get our info out there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. May the Force be with you always.
And remember, the only family you have here is me.
We'll see you guys next week.